Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Lore of Light, hence the lemon Slaan here. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to be taking the Lizardmen up against the Greenskins in a showcase of the Lore of Light. So I've elected to take the Light Mage here in order to show this lore off, because he can take double banishment. Yes, indeed. So the Light Slaan has a bound banishment and can also take the magical version as well. Banishment is a very strong vortex ability, one of the stronger vortex abilities in the game. 18 winds of magic. Can do quite a bit of damage. We've also got Light of Battle, which makes the unit unbreakable for 30 seconds, and Phos Protection, which gives armor and melee defense. It's probably the first time I've ever brought Lore of Light without bringing Nets of Ammontok, but due to recent nerfs, I don't think it's as useful as it used to be. It is certainly still a very useful spell, and I would highly recommend bringing it in a variety of situations. We'll talk about that towards the end screen. We've also got the Shield of the Old Ones, of course, Blood Statue of Spite, and the Aura of Pretzels. We've also got a Saurus Scarvet here to back up the Slaan Mage Priest, quite literally. In terms of the army composition, we've gone with a Skink/Kroxigor build. We've got a front line of 3 Skinks, 4 Skinks with Javelins, 3 Kroxigors, a Feral Bastildon, and a Revification Crystal. Good old Gary here. And we've also got 1 Skink Chief and 2 Pterodon Riders. So let's go ahead and take a look at the green skin list. We've got 4 Skovlan Spider Rider Archers, 2 units of them. The main line is going to be a mix of Black Orcs and Orc Biggins. Very nice anti-large and armor piercing. We've got 1 unit of Orc Boar Boys with a Goblin Big Boss backing them up. 2 units of Trolls, Azag the Slaughterer up in the air. We've got Orc Air Boys, 2 of them. And I believe that's pretty much it. I don't see any rusty arrows or anything else. So let's go ahead and kick the battle into full gear. We'll watch as things unfold. We're going to be having a little bit of a skirmish phase here as the Skinks and the Spider Riders kind of exchange some fire. You can see, the Pterodon Riders here, you can see them firing in on that other group of Spider Riders. Unfortunately, not doing a lot of damage. We're taking a little bit of damage, though. Very, very fun stuff. So let's go ahead and turn just briefly here while this skirmish phase gets underway to the Lore of Light. So typically, the Lore of Light is seen as a defensive support lore. Typically, in patches past, it has mostly been used as the Net of Ammontok lore. Famously, you would take an Empire Wizard with nothing except Nets of Ammontok, and then another caster just so that you would have the nets. But since nets has been changed to only be a single target, it's not quite as powerful as it used to be. It still is very powerful. If you overcast it, still gives it that area of effect. But yeah, overall the spell's not as useful as it used to be. Banishment has likewise also been buffed, along with many of the other Vortex spells for Total War Warhammer 2, so it's a much more viable spell now. The other support spells are decent. You know, Phos Protection is pretty good. Light of Battle is not amazing, but it's okay in certain situations. And the other one that I haven't mentioned yet, Barona's Time Warp, is another very good buff spell. That one actually gives speed and melee attack. You can see the Kroxigors charging in here, going to be getting some brutal damage done on these Black Orcs here. We've got the Feral Bastildon, the Stegodon, and all that charging in here. You can see we're forming a nice big blob here with which to banish. Azag decides to come down and get on the Revification Crystal here, which is probably a good move. You can see the Trolls rolling up on the flank. We're going to be focus firing with the Skink and the Pterodon Riders and the Skink Chief. And here comes the banishment now. So we've got the 1 banishment. We're immediately going to pop that Shield of the Old Ones to protect friendly units, and then pop the other banishment right in this same pocket. So you can see these greenskins have just taken an absolute thrashing from this brutal, just torrent of magic unleashed from this Slaan Mage Priest here. Yeah, it's going to be pretty brutal for the greenskins. You can see all those are actually just regular Orc Boys getting routed off there. Likewise, Black Orcs and more getting routed off. So pretty bad situation. Azag is still relatively healthy at this point. Kroxigors are enraged, and he's been able to do some solid damage to the front line, but you can see how backbreaking those 2 banishments were. We're able to get a nice big terror rout. Of course, Gary, the terrifying Bastildon that he is. Gary's not terrifying. He's adorable, let's be real. But he does cause terror, though, and the greenskins are going to be scared of him. We've got the Saurus Scarvet in here fighting up against Azag. Of course, the Scarvet's got anti-large armor piercing, so he's going to be very good in helping to take down Azag in that situation. So we've pretty well won the battle at this point. We're seeing off the trolls with the Pterodon Riders. Skinks doing very well in the main line, just kind of soaking the hits meant for the Croc scores. You can see them going to be moving up in here. The Orc Biggins getting into them as well. We're kind of reforming ranks for a little bit of a second phase engagement here as the Spider Riders and more unload into the Pterodon Riders. Pterodon Riders definitely going to be a little bit vulnerable to that missile fire, but you can see Azag's not able to get out because he's surrounded by Croxigors here, and in addition to the Saurus Scarvet, he's not going to be able to get out of here, unfortunately. So with the loss of leadership, Greenskins, as you know, generally have relatively poor leadership, so they're going to be able to be routed off. You can see, though, he has done some damage. Some of these Croc scores have been routed as well. A lot of my Skink units are very, very tattered at this point, but just the leadership's not able to hold up for the Greenskin forces. You can see Skinks coming in here, engaging on Orc Airboys. Orc Airboys will actually be probably more than a match for these Skinks, unfortunately, but with the Croc score support nearby, and with the leadership situation fast crumbling, you can see Azag's flying away as he gets completely just gadded down by these Pterodon Riders here. So yeah, it is going to be a victory for the Lizardmen. Well played to my opponent. It's a fun time getting to use the Light Slaan. Not a super common Lord choice, so it's always a good time to be able to bring him back. And one more banishment just for the road here, just to have a little bit more fun with these Orc Biggins. Man, they're just getting completely gibbed there. So well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that battle. Yeah, Lore of Light is very good. I didn't bring the lore attribute here or mention it because it is pertinent against the undead only. We'll go ahead and take a look at that in just a moment here. But in terms of the end screen, the Slaan himself racking up 83 kills with those banishments. A lot of that coming against elite tier Greenskin infantry as well, like these Black Orcs. Overall, the Skinks with Javelins contributed, the Croc scores contributed, and the Pterodon Riders also did their work, but really the Light Slaan is the MVP there. Azag got forced into a little bit of a rough situation. Azag is pretty decent in this matchup, but the High Slaan is also a big risk as well. So typically I would say Wurzag's probably a better pick. We'll take a look at Wurzag himself on another day when we look at the lore of the Big Wog. I've got a replay for him already. But in terms of the Lore of Light here, we'll go ahead and just finish things off with a quick discussion about the rest of the Lore of Magic here. So let's go ahead and take a look. So factions with access to the Lore of Light, first of all, is going to be the Tomb Kings with Lich Priest Lore of Light. The Empire, of course, has the Light Wizard that has, you know, the full complement here. Likewise, the Lizardmen, as we saw, have the Light Slaan right here. And then we also have, I believe that's the High Elves. Yes, they also have access to Lore of Light. So the Light Mage here as well. So in terms of the spells for the Lore of Light here, so the, yeah, Exorcism is the lore attribute here. It's a map-wide -8 leadership for 25 seconds. Only affects undead, though. So Lore of Light in that way is going to be particularly useful against Tomb Kings and Vampires, of course, since both of those factions have units that are undead. It is going to give them a -8 leadership, and since a lot of the undead units tend to have poor leadership anyway, that -8 does count for quite a bit. Can even be enough to send them into crumbling if they're, you know, already wavering, so can be potentially useful there. In every other matchup, it's not even worth taking, so you can cut it most of the time, but if you're facing the undead, definitely want to bring that along. In terms of the other spells here, Faw's Protection we got to look at. In terms of the Overcast version, it just gives an added area of effect. Plus 30 armor and 27 melee defense is pretty solid. It can help your troops tank out more damage. Shem's Burning Gaze is a magic missile that does fire and magic damage, which is important to note. It's going to be very good against characters that are weak to fire damage, similar to Fireball. It doesn't quite do as much damage. I need to do a little bit of testing with it, but the Hand of the Gods that Krokar carries, for example, is just a bound Shem's Burning Gaze. I believe it's the Overcast version, but it does do a pretty decent amount of damage. Not the most, but can be useful in particular matchups, especially if you're facing someone like the Vampires that's going to be having you know, a lot of regenerating units. You can use this Shem's Burning Gaze to help spam that Exorcism, and you're also going to be putting out damage on regenerating units, so it can potentially be useful there. Light of Battle, again, makes a unit unbreakable for a short amount of time. Only 7 wins of magic, again, can be useful to help proc that that exorcism trait, in particular if you're fighting a faction with a lot of terror. It can be useful to help hold the line. Honestly, though, it's not the best spell in the world. It's one that I usually will leave at home. It's a little bit situational, but Net of Amontok, on the other hand, is the premier spell of Lore of Light. It's really the one that most people know the lore best for. Of course, pins an enemy in place, and if you overcast it, it adds an effect area. So very powerful spell overall, useful in a multitude of situations. You can net someone and shoot them, net them and charge them, or just net them to interrupt them from charging. It can be used in a multitude of different situations and is almost always a useful pick. So good arsenal, good tool to have in any arsenal. Barona's Time Warp is an interesting one. It gives 26 melee attack and 24% speed in a pretty large area of effect, and it lasts a decent amount of time. 41 seconds, 40 meter area of effect, so it's pretty decent. If you overcast it, only goes up to 15 winds of magic, so it's not too expensive. It does just increase the area of effect there to be 55 meters, which is massive. And it's not the best spell in the world, but it can be useful in a multitude of situations, especially for a faction specifically like the Tomb Kings that doesn't have a lot of melee attack buffs built in. In fact, I don't think they have any other way of getting a melee attack buff short of My Will Be Done. But Barona's Time Warp can be very useful for them in particular. Likewise, for the Lizardmen, I don't think they have too many other attack buffs. Let's see. I don't remember if Beasts or Heavens off the top of my head has a melee attack buff. I don't think so. Besides, well, of course, Harmonic Convergence. But yeah, Barona's Time Warp is a nice big area of effect, so it can potentially be useful to help juice up a front line of Saurus or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Lore of Light. It's kind of the anti-undead lore, and it is also a useful support lore. Like I said, since Net of Amontok was nerfed, I think it went from being one of the top tier lores to maybe like a tier 2 lore. Still very useful. Banishment, as you guys saw, does a ton of damage and can be a very good tool. But in a lot of situations, especially depending on your lord choice, I think it's better to take other lores of magic. You know, if you have healing on your lord, on the other hand, it may be worth it to take light. So like, for example, if we look at the Empire, if you take Boris or Volkmar the Grim, either one of them, you know, you're going to be relatively safe to bring another lore of magic besides Lore of Life because your general can heal. But if you're taking someone like Karl Franz, you're probably going to want to take Lore of Life to try and keep him in the fight. But that's why some of the other, you know, self-healing lords could be useful in that respect. So like if you take Volkmar, then you can also take the Light Wizard because you don't necessarily have to worry about healing him. Healing would still be useful, and there's an argument to be made that healing is the way to go in almost any situation. But I do think Lore of Light has its niche, especially for factions with heavy shooting. Can be a very, very useful tool. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed watching that Light Slaan replay. If you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification button so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.